Some of us need to go outside and touch grass and not be like Cooper sitting inside the house playing Clash. But you know what grass does? Well, I don't know, but I bet Dion does.
This is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis happens inside of a leaf. Now, once this loads, we can see stomata and guard cells. Stomata is the empty space in the middle, while guard cells are the two cells in between. This facilitates gas exchange, but when it's closed, no gas exchange can happen. Now, let's go inside of the stomata. Inside of the stomata, we can see plant cells which all have chloroplast, like the one shown here. Now, inside of the chloroplast, we see thylakoid. Empty space is just the stomata, and the whole structure is called the granum, while the single structure is called the thylakoid. Now, we go on to actually what photosynthesis is. Now we see a plant in the sun. The first thing that's needed is water, which goes up the roots and gets transported by the xylem. The second thing we need is CO2, which comes in from the atmosphere and goes into the stomata. The third thing we need is sunlight, which comes from the sun into the leaf. Now, photosynthesis is made up of two parts, light-dependent reactions and light-independent reactions, or dark reactions. Dependent happens in the granum. When we zoom into the granum, we see photosystem 1, 2, and ATP synthase. System 2, we see H2O and light going in to make hydrogen and oxygen gas. Then we see electrons moving to photosystem 1 as well as more hydrogen. NADP and hydrogen combine to make NADPH, which makes a concentration gradient of hydrogen, which forces hydrogen to go into the ATP synthase to make AT. Usually, this happens 6 times, which is very important. Now, we move on to light-independent reactions, as shown on this screen. Now, we see the granum again, but we zoom into the stroma this time, which reveals the Calvin cycle. We need 2 G3Ps to make 1 glucose, so the cycle happens twice. While the animation plays again, we should note that the ADP, phosphate, and the NADP plus is sent back to the light-dependent reactions. Knowing that this happens twice is very important when it comes to the Calvin cycle and the production of glucose in the stroma. Now we see 2 G3P, which is basically just glucose. Now we see the total products of photosynthesis as a whole. That was photosynthesis, and you're halfway there to knowing the full cycle of how plants get their energy. Now we move on to cellular respiration.
This is the mitochondria, and it's where the majority of cellular respiration takes place. Inside of it is where most of the energy we use is made. But what actually is energy? This is adenosine triphosphate, or just ATP for short. And it is used by breaking off the last phosphate and releasing a burst of energy. Now back onto the actual cellular respiration. The first step is called glycolysis. This step takes place in the cytoplasm right outside of the mitochondria. It occurs in both aerobic with air and anaerobic without air respiration. This starts with 1 molecule of glucose. If we combine these, we get 2 pyruvates and 4 ATPs. So the total for glucose is that mess, with a net of 2 ATP in the process being transferred over to the Krebs cycle. The second step is the Krebs cycle. This one takes place inside of the mitochondria. It happens in aerobic respiration, but not in anaerobic respiration. The Krebs cycle, it starts with the pyruvate from glycolysis. But remember, we have 2 pyruvates, so this happens twice. While it plays again, note that the CO2 is released, and the 8 NADH and the 2 FADH2 goes to the last step. In total, it's that mess. The key is a net 2 gain of ATP. Step 3 is the electron transport chain, or just the ETC. The ETC is a series of proteins and molecules located in the inner membranes of the mitochondria. Each group of proteins are called complexes. There's 4 of these, so complex 1 through 4, plus a few random ones. NADH splits at complex 1, splitting into NAD plus H and 2 electrons that get carried by this Q thing. The hydrogens move through the complex one side to the other side. In complex 2, FADH2 splits into FADH2 and another 2 oxygens that get carried through the Q thing. The hydrogens cross the membrane at complex 3. The electrons leave the transport chain at complex 4, being combined with O and H2 to make H2O. There's one thing we can't see, the ATP synthase. Let's bring that into the frame. Remember all the hydrogen from earlier? The hydrogen moved through the ATP synthase, spinning, creating 30 to 34 ATP. But we're only showing 1 because Vihan is really lazy. But the total cellular respiration formula is glucose plus 6 oxygen equals 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 water, 34 to 38 ATP. That's cellular respiration. On to you, Vihan.
These processes are very connected and almost dependent on each other. From photosynthesis to cellular respiration, there's the transfer of glucose and oxygen, and vice versa, there's the transfer of carbon dioxide and water. This means that if one of them stops working, the other one is likely to as well. So, what did we learn?
Ever animate again. This took so long to animate. Look how fast I'm scrolling on the bottom. This was 30 plus minutes just for one segment. It took so long.
Also, if you guys like this video, make sure to hit that like button and smash that subscribe button. If we get to 1 subscriber by the end of the century, I'll paint my nails pink. I know it's a big ask, but I think we can do it.